Picture waking to a world transformed not by bombs or sirens, but by a silence more frightening than war itself. Imagine opening your eyes at dawn and realizing that, in the space of a single sunrise, every trace of a nation's military backbone, its weapons, its vehicles, its fuel, its ammunition, had simply vanished. There were no warning signs, no blaring alarms, no columns of smoke on the horizon, not even the distant rumble of explosions. Just a sudden, uncanny quiet where the lifeblood of readiness had throbbed only hours before. This is not a nightmare, nor is it a drill. It is an event so extraordinary, so surgically precise, that even those trained to expect the unexpected found themselves utterly unprepared. In those first uncertain hours, Ukraine's military infrastructure, hundreds of depots, storage yards, and vital supply lines, was erased, as if by a stroke of divine or malevolent will. Simultaneously, and without a trace of violence in the traditional sense, every major war asset across thousands of hectares simply ceased to exist. There were no fires, no heaps of twisted metal, no survivors combing through ruins. Only scorched, empty ground, as if the machinery of war had never been there at all. Consider the scale. Ukraine's defense network spanned the breadth of a continent, with bunkers and reserves carefully hidden across forests, fields, and urban sprawl. The logistics alone took years to build, at the cost of billions of dollars and countless hours. To have this all vanish in an instant is not only unprecedented, it is unfathomable. Historically, even the most devastating attacks, consider the Allied bombing of Dresden during the Second World War or the firebombing of Tokyo, left behind ruins, survivors, and scars. Here, there were only voids, as if history itself had been selectively deleted. No alarms rang out, no satellites blinked red. Radar screens, worth billions, failed to flicker with so much as a blip. Missile shields, layered in concentric circles and guided by the world's most advanced detection software, found nothing. Even the newest detection systems, those designed to see what cannot be seen, did not register a hint of a threat. It was as though reality itself had bent, permitting the impossible to pass through unnoticed. But the wound cut even deeper than lost hardware. At that very moment, all digital records, inventory tallies, encrypted command chains, even the most secure backup protocols, were wiped away. Hardened servers, air-gapped computers, and off-site data vaults became useless, their contents erased as thoroughly as the weapons they tracked. The chain of command was not just broken, it was erased completely. Even analog systems, landline phones, paper files, handwritten logs, failed, as if every method of communication had been uninvented overnight. The impact reverberated far beyond Ukraine's borders. Across Europe, and indeed the entire planet, military and intelligence leaders stared in disbelief at their screens. Some issued urgent but hollow statements, while adversaries maintained a chilling, purposeful silence. No one stepped forward to claim responsibility. No one could explain how an entire war machine, physical and digital, could vanish in a single silent blow. This event sent tremors through every war room, embassy, and intelligence agency in existence. If the world's most sophisticated defenses can be undone by a weapon that leaves no trace, then no nation, no city, no institution is secure. Power, stability, and even the very idea of control have become fragile illusions. The rules of conflict have changed, and something far larger is now at stake. The power to erase the foundations of society itself, with no warning and no defense. To make sense of this new and lethal reality, we must examine what little remains to be known about the strike, and the enigmatic force that made it possible. What exactly happened in those lost minutes before dawn, and what clues remain for us to study? The answers begin with the first, faint traces left behind in the aftermath. This was not a barrage of missiles. It was not sabotage. It was a single surgical blow that rewrote the rules of war in a single breath. With dawn barely breaking, every major Ukrainian depot, ammunition, fuel, equipment, was struck at the same instant. There was no warning, No radar signature, no streaks in the sky. In less than 60 seconds, the backbone of an entire military vanished. Official statements stumbled out, cautious and vague, a pause masquerading as control. Reports mentioned ongoing investigations and damage checks, but behind closed doors, panic spread through command. No one could explain what had happened or how such a comprehensive strike had left nothing behind. The scale and thoroughness of the erasure defied all known military logic. Satellite images revealed the impossible. Regions once crowded with bunkers and supply yards now appeared as blank scars, scorched, featureless, and eerily empty. There were no craters, no burning wrecks, just voids where infrastructure had stood the night before. Imagine using Google Earth to scan a city, only to find entire city blocks missing, replaced by indistinct blurs. That was the reality for Ukraine's defense network. More unsettling still, investigators found no traces of familiar explosives. There was no chemical residue, no shrapnel, no evidence of thermobarics or high explosives. It was as if these sites had been erased, swallowed by a force that left no fingerprints, only the stark absence of material. For comparison, after the Chernobyl disaster, radioactive isotopes could be detected for decades. Here, there was not a single molecule that did not belong. The attack did not end with physical destruction. In that same instant, all radio communications and navigation systems within hundreds of kilometers died. Command structures were severed, units lost their bearings, and the digital map of the war zone flickered out, leaving soldiers and generals blinded by silence. The effect was similar to electromagnetic pulses used during the Gulf War, but on a far more devastating and comprehensive scale. This is more than a new weapon. It is a new kind of war, one that can erase not just weapons and supplies, but the very ability to fight, to coordinate, even to remember. If it can happen once, every old rule is obsolete. The world has crossed a threshold, and no one knows what comes next. But how could such an attack be possible? What kind of technology can reach so far, so suddenly, and so silently? To understand, we must look closer at the force behind this operation. The answers lie not in conventional arsenals, but in the shadowy frontier where physics, code, and intent converge. There, something truly unprecedented has awakened. This was not mere destruction. It was absolute erasure, delivered by a weapon that should not exist outside the realm of science fiction. Intelligence sources concur. Only a single, impossibly precise munition was used. Analysts agree its targeting was fully autonomous, guided by artificial intelligence that selected and struck its mark with inhuman accuracy. There was no barrage, no storm of missiles, just one strike, and nothing remained. Observers were not only shocked by the scale of the result, but by the nature of the weapon itself. The attack unleashed a convergence of untraceable effects. Physical devastation flattened entire depots and bunkers. Simultaneously, electromagnetic pulses silenced every form of communication. In parallel, a digital onslaught erased vital military data without a trace. It was as if every layer of defense, steel, circuitry, and code had vanished in a single breath. The true terror, however, lay in the weapon's invisibility. No warning system, no ground radar, not even orbital satellites detected a launch or trajectory. The munition simply appeared where it was needed, bypassing every known sensor and safeguard. Experts now whisper about subspace masking or phase-shifting technology, suggesting for a moment the weapon did not exist in any domain humanity can monitor. While the physical strike unfolded, cyber attacks detonated across Ukraine's networks. Secure files, backup logs, and real-time command data evaporated, as if history itself had been rewritten. Suddenly, entire chains of command were left blind, unable to communicate or access basic logistics. Ukraine's military was not merely incapacitated, it was conceptually erased. This was more than an annihilation of resources. It was a calculated warning, a demonstration that the age of secure infrastructure has ended. No safe havens remain, no fallback plans hold. The bedrock of military logistics, the trust in hardened bunkers and protected information, has become an illusion. If no defense system on Earth can even perceive this threat, let alone counter it, how can any nation or alliance claim to be safe? Overnight, the doctrine of deterrence and layered protection has collapsed. The rules of warfare have been rewritten, and the world must grapple with a future where nothing is unassailable. But even as leaders scramble for answers, panic spreads beyond military circles. The implications reach far past the battlefield, threatening every institution that relies on secure information. Consider, for instance, how financial markets have historically responded to cyber attacks. When the New York Stock Exchange suffered a major outage in the year 2015, billions of dollars in value evaporated in hours, even though the physical infrastructure was untouched. Now, imagine similar effects cascading through military, political, and social institutions worldwide. In a single, unthinkable moment, decades of strategy and untold billions in investment were swept away. The shockwaves from this strike ripple outward, with the true scale of loss only beginning to dawn on the world. Every capital holds its breath. Official statements remain calm and measured, but beneath the surface, panic brews. Allies who once trusted in time-tested doctrines now gather in secret, anxious that their own defenses might be just as exposed, perhaps already irrelevant. In NATO's history, Article 5 has only been invoked once, after the September 11th attacks. Now, leaders wonder whether even collective defense is meaningful in the face of erasure. Military alliances worldwide call emergency sessions. This is not a matter of restocking munitions or repairing supply lines. Leaders are forced to face a chilling reality. From logistics to command, every layer must be rebuilt. The old manuals are useless, and no roadmap exists for what comes next. This is a challenge not only of technology, but of imagination and adaptability. Analysts are stark in their assessments. The attack did not merely destroy physical stockpiles. It obliterated records, erased digital command systems, and silenced entire networks in seconds. Ukraine's military memory itself has been wiped clean, leaving a psychological wound that spreads far beyond the battlefield. This is psychological warfare at its most sophisticated, to erase not only the capacity to fight, but the very memory of how to fight. This was not just a physical blow, it was a masterstroke of psychological warfare. The dual assault, both tangible and informational, has cracked the logic of modern conflict wide open. Time-honored rules have been discarded, replaced by a terrifying uncertainty. In the First World War, armies adapted to machine guns and gas. In the Second World War, to blitzkrieg and nuclear weapons. Today, the adaptation required is to survive the unsensed, the unseen, the unremembered. Diplomatic signals subtly shift. States quietly admit to themselves that the threat they face is not just powerful, but invisible and unpredictable. The foundations of deterrence are crumbling. When an enemy can erase your existence without warning, defense becomes an unsolvable puzzle. The concept of mutually assured destruction, which kept the Cold War cold, may no longer apply. New fears gather as unconfirmed reports emerge of similar, though smaller, incidents elsewhere. Some experts warn this may have been only a demonstration, a message that no region can consider itself immune. The weapon's reach is global, its true limits still hidden in darkness. Imagine if, overnight, the entire air defense grid of a major power simply ceased to function, or if the banking records of an entire nation vanished. The implications are staggering. For every nation, the stakes could scarcely be higher. Failure to adapt now means risking not only territory, but autonomy, prestige, and the very ability to respond before being overwhelmed. The notion of national survival itself hangs in the balance. Historically, those who failed to adapt, like the French army relying on the Maginot Line in 1939, were swept aside by enemies who fought by new rules. Yet amidst the chaos, a handful of leaders and strategists grasp for answers, desperate to understand what comes next. In the ruins of the old order, new rules are being written in real time. Will they be enough? When the only certainty is uncertainty, the rules of war, defense, and survival must be rewritten. The attack on Ukraine was not only the destruction of supply lines, it was the erasure of memory, order, and every thread of connection. The old logic of deep bunkers, thick walls, and endless reserves no longer assures safety. Our adversaries have shown they can wipe out not just what we possess, but what we know and how we even begin to respond. Resilience now must go far beyond the physical. It must be digital, psychological, even conceptual. Armed forces and societies alike need overlapping layers, systems able to reboot themselves, people trained to adapt in chaos, and the capacity to function when every familiar map has been burned away. During the Second World War, the British established backup command posts and mobile headquarters. Today, resilience must mean distributed digital infrastructure, decentralized decision-making, and human adaptability. The new arms race is not about who has more tanks or bigger bombs. It is a contest of adaptation. Who can pivot quickest, who has backup plans for their backup plans, and who can still operate when their databases, networks, and collective memories are erased in an instant. This is reminiscent of the early days of the Internet, when the ARPANET was designed to route around damage and reroute itself no matter what nodes were lost. We must prepare for attacks that target not just infrastructure, but perception and memory itself. The next invisible front is an assault on how we think, how we coordinate, and the trust that lets people act together. If that is shattered, agency dissolves, along with security, reputation, and the future. In a sense, the greatest vulnerability is not physical, but conceptual, our reliance on collective knowledge and memory. In this new era, secrecy is often less valuable than transparency and speed. It is about sharing knowledge, changing strategies rapidly, and accepting that control is never absolute. Security no longer means perfect defense. It means the ability to recover, improvise, and resist erasure day after day. Think of the resilience shown by Estonia after the 2007 cyber attacks. By decentralizing data and empowering local officials, they continued to function even as their networks came under unprecedented assault. The first step to regaining agency is facing what erasure warfare truly is. Only by confronting it directly can nations, organizations, and individuals uncover their own blind spots and build new forms of resilience. This means conducting rigorous red teaming exercises, questioning every assumption, and stress-testing systems against the unimaginable. Those who cling to the old rules will face more than defeat. They risk being wiped from records, from memory, from relevance itself. In a world where history can be rewritten or deleted in seconds, refusing to change is a recipe for vanishing altogether. Consider the fate of vanished civilizations, the Indus Valley, the Olmecs, forgotten not just through conquest, but through the loss of memory itself. So, what does this mean for you, right now, wherever you are? Because if the world can be erased in seconds, your own story, the life you have built, can become just as fragile. The question is, how do you protect what cannot be replaced? Start by understanding that security is not a static state. It is a process, a vigilance, a readiness to adapt faster than threats evolve. For individuals, this means backing up your memories, your work, your relationships in multiple forms and in multiple places. For organizations, it means cultivating cultures of transparency, adaptability, and distributed authority. For nations, it means investing in digital literacy, psychological resilience, and the ability to recover from the unthinkable. Imagine a scenario. A hospital loses all patient data to a cyber attack. In the past, this might mean chaos, but with distributed backups, paper protocols, and staff trained in improvisation, lives can still be saved. Now expand this up to the scale of a nation. Distributed command, diverse communication channels, and leaders trained to operate in the dark. This is the blueprint for survival in the age of erasure. The future will not slow down for anyone. Erasure is already here. Are you ready to redefine what security truly means? We are standing at a crossroads no one expected. The complete obliteration of Ukraine's logistics, in the physical, digital, and informational worlds, has exposed a chilling reality. The rules of warfare, deterrence, and defense have been swept aside. What we once trusted is now irrelevant. This was not merely an assault on equipment or infrastructure. It was a strike against memory itself, against the structures that let us understand loss. The erasure was so precise, so absolute, that even the traces and records of existence disappeared instantly. It was as if, in a single stroke, the chalkboard was wiped clean, leaving only questions where there should have been answers. If we cling to the past and refuse to adjust, the risk is far deeper than losing ground or resources. The danger is existential, to be erased entirely from the narrative. Imagine waking to find your plans, alliances, and very identity wiped away, as if they never existed. We are witnessing the rise of warfare by erasure. In this new era, the gravest danger is not what you see destroyed, but the silent emptiness left behind, the loss of data, history, and context, which paralyzes any coordinated response. Power, reputation, and agency can vanish overnight, and you may not even notice until it is far too late. Will you evolve your idea of security to face this threat, or will you risk being erased from history before you even realize the rules have changed? The choice is yours, and the clock is already ticking.